So let's start with the facilitators. Let's see, we'll start with Evanik. Evanik, thank you for starting this tradition. Really appreciate that. Go ahead.
Okay, so I might disappoint you this time, Surikant.
Okay.
We talked mostly about like the comfort zone, and so I'm just going to summarize what came up in the question format. So what happens? So the question is, Allison came up with, what happens if the discomfort zone is your comfort zone?
Okay.
And what motivates people to get out of their comfort zone? And is there really such a thing as a comfort zone, or can the comfort zone be within you?
Can you rephrase that?
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about is, how do you get a comfort zone? And I was saying that, to me, sometimes there is no such real thing as a comfort zone. It's just kind of like what is within you. Like you have to be comfortable with who you are, kind of like what we talk about in the Gita meetups, the core, like getting to know who you are inside. And that's like that could be your comfort zone. And like being comfortable with who you are, like I always say warts and all, but like, all your flaws, loving who you are, like all your flaws and everything. So could that be your comfort zone?
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Thank you. Folks, even if you are in a group, this is not the definitive, whatever the facilitators are summarizing. You can add any questions that you want to it. Okay. So let's go next with Becky. Becky, go ahead.
Okay. What aspects of personality play in staying or leaving one's comfort zone? How does someone become aware that he is in his comfort zone?
Hold on. Do you become aware?
Personality question.
Go ahead. Next up.
The second one, you got down.
Yes, the one I got was, how do you become aware whether you are in your comfort zone or not?
How does someone decide the right balance between comfort and challenge?
Beautiful. Okay.
And then the last one is, what's the correlation between potential and staying in your comfort zone?
Okay, correlation between potential and staying. Okay, very good. Thank you. Next up is Mike.
Yeah, so we had a couple of really interesting turns. There was the discussion where Judy said she lived by the mantra that comfort was a killer as a musician, like just even in her life, he just does not feel that way. And Dan, who joined us, joined Meetup to actually become more social and come out of our comfort zone, which is kind of ironic. But he talked about going camping and coming back feeling rejuvenated because there's no comfort out in nature. And I kind of combined it with Judy's idea that comfort is a killer. And can we pose the question that is too much comfort, or comfort in general, does it have a negative aspect to it? I don't know how you want to polish that, but.
Very good. I'm going to put it as, is comfort a killer?
Yeah, that's even,
I like that.
That's even better. And then Lloyd brought up the question of, being able to pull the trigger when you're not 100% sure of what to do. So how do you break that? How do people become comfortable? And Jeff alluded to that a little bit too, that about being tentative about your conclusions, them not being definitive. So I guess the question, how do you pull the trigger on a decision when you're not 100% sure of the outcome? Or
okay, very good.
And Fred, who is a not just a student of mine, but as a doctor and a surgeon, and we talked about his process of being allowed to do surgery, coming out of residency to eventually be performing surgery. And he said that there was a very clear step-by-step approach. There's a support system along the way. So I guess we can pose the question of what is the importance of having a support system as you begin to break down comfort zones or achieve more difficult tasks. And Jeff, if you have anything you want to add to, because you had some really good points, you can add that at some point later on.
Jeff, welcome back, by the way.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Okay, folks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recount these questions. While we are doing that, I'm going to take some volunteers. How about I'm going to volunteer Evanik and Joe to type up these questions. I'll give one to each of them. But you're welcome to keep adding questions. Jeff, go ahead.
Hi, Shrikant.
Welcome.
Good to see you from the West Village.
Yes.
So I have three quick propositions, each which has their own question.
Mm-hmm.
One is this. I think that one of the most common evidences of human beings being scared is that when we hold our opinions as if we believe we're 100% right, rather than being able to hold them with the assumption that we're at least 10 to 20% wrong all the time, and we don't really know which 10 to 20% it is. And we'd be a lot smarter if we just be willing to put the word tentative in front of all of our conclusions. And so we'd say, my tentative conclusion is this. Now, the reason why I start with that proposition is that the second proposition is the definition of courage is to feel the fear and do it anyway. And I think that's a big part of what we're talking about here. But this is the question about what is our conversation with the chocolate? What is our conversation as that parrot hanging upside down with ourselves, which is the single most important conversation we have all day and never ending. We're constantly having a conversation with ourselves, but often we are not aware of it. It's not explicit. It is implicit. It is controlling, but it is not really known. And so your whole point, Shrikant, about getting explicit, employing Brian's mental interiority to become more knowledgeable about whatever it is we're telling ourselves that is making us uncomfortable. If we can't achieve a level of self-awareness where we're open, to being possibly wrong regarding our opinions that's making us uncomfortable, we're stuck. And that is another way to describe this. We're stuck. And the third proposition is this. So number one is, can I allow that I might be wrong in whatever I'm telling myself? Because if I can't allow that, I'm stuck and there's no way out. Number two is, can I discover what it is that I'm telling myself? Because without self-awareness, there's no way out. And then the third is, how can I overcome my limiting beliefs? And I think, and what seldom happens is that we actually give ourselves examples of empowering beliefs that can actually compete with our limiting beliefs. And I want to offer a couple. One, I can figure this out. Sort of the definition of agency. I don't really know exactly everything there is to know about this, but I think I'm going to be able to figure it out. Second, I'm not really sure what's going to happen here, but whatever happens, I think I'm going to be able to deal with it. That's also agency, sort of dealing with the unknown. And the third is, even if it all goes to hell, it'll be okay. We'll recover. The resilience orientation as part of agency. And those are examples of empowering beliefs, empowering statements that we can make with ourselves that allow us to feel uncomfortable and do it anyway, because we really do want to do it. But how do we empower ourselves to feel the fear and do it anyway? And so this process of allowing empowering beliefs to compete with our limiting beliefs is my third proposition. And how can we do that? I'll stop there.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Does anybody else want to put anything more on the table? You're welcome to do that. Go ahead and type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. Go ahead and, any questions that you want to put on the table. Joe, Jang, and Mike. Joe.
Yeah, I think what is the importance of having a set of principles that allows you to get outside your comfort zone and deal with uncertainty? I think that that's an important question to ask, because essentially you may have a fear of failure, but the willingness to accept failure in that process is maybe a principle, so that if you're not failing, you're not trying. Kind of an approach. So what are the role of having a set of principles that allows you to challenge the unknown or deal with uncertainty?
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you. Next up is going to be Jang, Mike, Dan, and Lloyd. Jang.
Yeah, my question is, I think we have different kind of comfort zone from both physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. The question is what we choose to get out of comfort zone, because we just don't have all this energy to deal with all the challenges in different areas. It seems we can only pick a limited. And we discussed about the comfort zone actually is to find our potential. So there's so much potential in every aspect of our life. I just found it's hard to make a choice which area to challenge ourselves.
Wonderful. These are so many amazing questions that, what are the various dimensions of comfort zone, emotional or mental, habitual, and then the energy actually needed to make the change, and how do you optimize it? Fantastic. Let's continue. Next up is going to be Mike. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, the question is there does one have a moral obligation to stretch out and grow with the goal of serving others with that benefit?
Wonderful. Moral obligation. Stretch. Wonderful. Next up is going to be Dan. Dan.
Yeah, I just had this thought come up. Is it easier these days to get in a comfort zone, at least emotional comfort, having a supercomputer in our pockets that can alleviate any feelings of discomfort at any moment?
Wonderful. Is it easy? Very good. Next up is Lloyd, followed by Maritza. Lloyd.
Yes, following up on Jeff's point, science is a good paradigm for seeing that so much is tentative, because, with new discoveries and new knowledge, it overturns what we thought before. So I guess the question is, how can we better see that so much is tentative? I mean, science was an automatic thing that came to my mind, but how can we see more clearly that so much is tentative?
Wonderful. Excellent. See more clearly. We'll bring science in. Okay. Fantastic. I don't know how we're going to cover all of this. This is so delightful. It's so many different, we're coming at it from so many different angles. Excellent. Maritza, followed by Laura. Maritza.
How can we check to ensure that we are not evading the question of whether or not we remain within our comfort zone by seeking to help others remove themselves from their comfort zone? So I guess what I'm questioning is, where's that? How do we shine the mirror on ourselves when we're trying to help someone else get out of a comfort zone?
Wonderful. The moat versus beam. Wonderful. Next up is going to be Laura. Laura, what's your question?
Well, I don't know if it's a question so much, but can the comfort zone be a place where we go when we need to sort of we were always busy thinking about so many things and have our head going in a million places. Can a comfort zone be a place where we can go and take a little bit of time to unravel things and take a stop and see where we are with everything and tool ourselves sometimes and reevaluate before, to make sure we're in the right direction and, maybe leave some things behind and then move ahead. So I'm taking it from that perspective.
Wonderful.
Like the
So
rest,
I'll put it in terms of are there positive uses of the comfort zone?
This first time there's a positive. Yes, I'm looking at it from a positive perspective.
Wonderful. Next up is going to be Jyoti. Jyoti, go ahead. What's your question?
My question is it all right for some people to stay in their comfort zone to pull the courage from themselves?
Now, can you repeat that?
Is it okay for some people to stay in their comfort zone and pull the courage that they need for themselves?
Okay, wonderful. Excellent. All right. So this is so incredible. I can't believe that range of questions. I don't know where to start. So let me think about this here. Okay. So we're talking about comfort zone. Okay, how about starting with Laura's point about positive and negative? What is positive about the comfort zone and what is negative about the comfort zone? So folks, we have amazing set of questions that we're going to use to explore this topic. So try to keep your answers brief so we can get through as much as possible. But before that, Allison, did you want to add a question or did you want to answer this question?
Yeah, my question is creating chaos a comfort zone for people who've experienced a lot of trauma, like especially in their childhood?
Okay, creating chaos, wonderful. I'm going to put the concept of order and chaos, which is very much along the lines that we have discussed this issue in various things, especially Jordan Peterson. Okay, so the question on the table is, in what sense the comfort zone and being in the comfort zone is good, and in what sense is it bad? How do you know which it is at a current situation? So positive and negative uses of the comfort zone. We'll start, go ahead and type exclamation mark, and let's try to keep our answers brief so we can get through as many as possible. We're going to start with Evanik, followed by Jyoti. Evanik.
Yeah, I think the positive aspect of the comfort zone is it kind of gives you time to sit back and think when everything kind of gets so chaotic and you don't know where to go, you don't know which direction to go. You can use that comfort zone to sit back and think about where you want to go. I think the negative is kind of similar in that you could get comfortable in that place and not really go where you want to go and be dissatisfied with your life and the direction you're taking because you stayed there. When you get stuck there, I think it's a problem. So if it's keeping you from what you want to do in life, that's where the comfort zone becomes a negative.
Wonderful. Next up is Jyoti, Marco, and Joe. Jyoti.
Yeah, I'm going to say things just like Avanik said. Sometimes you get exhausted venturing out in life. You need a break. And it's okay to sit back and reflect and take your time to get out and explore again. And when it becomes too much for you, you need to sit back a little bit. You don't have to keep going. And how do you know that it's a little bit too much now? Because you start getting bored. You start getting bored with your routine, and you feel as though you're becoming very old and frail, and you need to now go out and reintroduce yourself to the world.
Wonderful. I think you're talking the language of flow here. Next up is going to be Marco.
Yeah, like if it's like at a job and you're sort of like trying to achieve the next level, and then you sort of start getting good at something, and then you reach your comfort zone and you're just ready like for the next sort of like step for the next to reach the next comfort zone, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco. Next up is Joe, followed by Maritza. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was an excellent point that Evanik and Jyoti had pointed out with the idea of time, being able to reassess things as being one advantage to the comfort zone. But I think the comfort zone is also an element of where you don't necessarily have any anxiety. So I think that anxiety brings a certain amount of clarity. And I think that there's an advantage to that. And time becomes one of those things as well as part of that. But then you're not anxious about dealing with things, so you can kind of think of things differently. If you're constantly challenging yourself and getting outside your comfort zone, you're learning and you're integrating new things. But with that, you're expending more energy. And that energy that you're expending is, it takes its toll, and there's trade-offs, as there is with anything you do in life. So that you may get caught up. And I think there was a question along these lines, is where you're almost there was someone, I forget which question it was, but it was something almost as if you're addicted to being outside of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And that can be just as challenging and just as dangerous as to getting too comfortable in your comfort zone. So we can, and I could list 100 positives as to why to get outside your comfort zone, but I'm sure we're going to cover that. But I think it's important to recognize the importance of that. I think there's a huge form follows function aspect to this too, but I didn't bring that up.
Wonderful, thank you. Next up is Maritza.
Sorry, Shrikant, I was going to say something and Joe made me think of something different.
All right, Joe.
Wait. Right, it's Joe's fault. I have another question now.
Yes.
What? Do we have to break out of our comfort zone? What if we stretch it? What if we just make it bigger? I mean, can we have a stretch zone? Or maybe like, I mean, because then there's like, if you're in your comfort zone, you're pretty, it's not very risky. But then if we jump right into a risk zone, that's like a huge step. What if we baby step ourselves into like a stretch?
Wonderful. Excellent. I want to say one thing again, I'm really focused on Gita. There is and this is actually relates to Evanik's point. There is a comfort at being at the center, which has a very different quality of the comfort when you are attached to something in the periphery. So you can find comfort in something which is external, temporary, and you're trying to hold on to it in the midst of its nature, which is flowing. You're trying to hold on to it. And then there is something about being at the core, which is a place of stability. So it's a question of where. I think where is a relevant thing of whether it, it is good or bad. Lisa.
I'm sorry, I was trying to tell you that was a beautiful statement, and somehow I wasn't able to write the words, but raise my hand.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So next question, let's take it now directly. How do you decide the balance between challenge and comfort? How do you make that choice? Laura. Laura, how do you make the choice between comfort and challenge?
Well, I think comfort and challenge. I mean, you kind of know when you're going to take on a challenge. I think something excites you and makes you nervous, and, you know, makes you wonder about the unknown that you have. And I think you're a little fearful. And I think those are all the reasons that, you know, it's different than when you're in your comfort zone, where you sort of stay relaxed about things. See, I have a problem. Here, I'll give you all a question. Can I have a comfort zone if my mantra is, I'm too young to be old and I'm too old to be young? Huh?
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Maritza.
You can't. The answer is that you dance. You take your basket of skills and you dance your way through until you find that perfect sweet spot between your skills and your challenges. And when you're there, you're in that perfect, you know, forward movement path, that flow state. And if you fall out of it, if you get bored or anxious, then you start dancing again, and you move a little up, move a little to the side, move a little down until you find that sweet spot again. Skills versus challenges. I think that's the key.
Wonderful. Folks, Maritza and Joya do this meetup on Flow every other Thursday at 7 p.m. So don't miss that. It really focuses on this issue in so many different ways, along so many different dimensions. Next up is Joe, Lloyd, and Evanique. Joe.
I think there's a time element to it, in the sense that if you are remaining uncomfortable with something too long, then that's probably you've overextended. So I think that's where, and then you have to also have measurements of growth within that. So you have to set goals and expectations so that you can say, okay, and they don't necessarily have to be set in stone, but you have to see some difference in yourself that, and this is, you have to get used to certain things like incremental progress in this process. It's not something that you're going to just do, but it's something that I think if you stay uncomfortable with it it's like if you're in a relationship and you're uncomfortable with somebody for 10 years, it's probably not going to work out. It's so at that particular moment of time. So I think that there's that aspect. I think the element of time, and then having honest markers of what progress really looks like, and being able to measure that progress, going back to John, our Friday night self-improvement guru, who would always talk about measurement. So, and I think that you can't have you have some predetermined measures of success, but you can also evolve in that process. You may notice something that you're achieving something new, developing a skill that you didn't otherwise have in that process, and be like, well, I would never knew that was going to come out of that. So it's like a spontaneous order that exists. So anyway.
Thank you. Lloyd, how do you balance between challenge and comfort?
Well, I agree with Maritza. I don't want to make it, too intellectual, that there's a formula or some kind of prescription. I think, at different points in your life, you're maybe more or less secure. And so I think it changes. I think, at a very secure time in your life, or things are going well, you could take on more challenges. At a time where you've had some setbacks or whatever, maybe you want to take less challenges or less risks. So I don't want to make it too intellectual that there's a formula that you could follow. I don't.
Thank you, Lloyd. Next up is going to be Evanique, followed by Allison. Evanique.
I like what Maritza said when she said it was a dance, because I think it is a moving target. Like, we're creatures, we're learning, we're growing, and we'll always have new challenges, and we'll always want to do something new or different, and no matter what it is, it could be going to another country, right? Or it could be as simple as learning something new, or participating in a meetup, or running a meetup, right? So I think it's a moving target. I think it's something that really can't be defined. Like, only you can decide how you're like, if coming out of your comfort zone is worth it, like the challenges part, or, is the challenge worth the reward? I think that's the way I would look at it, right? And only you can decide, and that's a moving target. Maybe it's not today, but maybe, a couple years from now, after you've learned some things and have grown, maybe it is. It really is a moving target. I don't think it's a scientific formula. I just think you kind of have to know, like, when you're dissatisfied.
Mhm.
When you've gotten stuck, because I think we've all felt stuck at some point in our lives, and it's time to move. You may not know what the move is. And like Maritza said, you may try your skill sets, you may try different things and see where it goes. And that's part of it, is maybe trying new things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work for you, and moving in the direction that works for you. And that's moving out of your comfort zone and doing the things. But only you could decide that. And sometimes it could be measured, but it also could be intuition. It could be, going with your gut, so to speak, and just knowing and not knowing why, and just going in that direction, which could be the most uncomfortable thing of all, but it would always be worth it, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Evanik. Next up is Allison, Jeff, Kevin, and Joe. Allison.
I think that you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone when it's interfering with your life. A story that I shared in the breakout room is that I have a phobia about driving in mountains, and I love mountains, but I can't be the one driving. And I was on a road trip about 10 years ago, and I was driving from Bryce Canyon to Sedona, and I didn't look at the map carefully, and I didn't realize that there's a 14,000 foot mountain in Arizona. And I thought I had 2 hours left, and all I wanted to do was get to the pool, and I wanted before dinner, and I wanted a prickly pear margarita by the pool. And all of a sudden I look up, and there's this massive mountain in front of me, and there was no way around it except over it. And I was like, if I try and drive around this thing, it's going to be dark, and then that could be more scary. And so I was like, all right, here I go. And I'm like sweating, and my hands are shaking. And but I was like, otherwise I could be driving for 6 hours around, who knows how big this thing is. So I drove over it somehow, got to the other side. And then since that time, I've tried to conquer that fear, but I just do little pieces, like not a big mountain, a little one. And I'll sometimes drive the same road like 6 times so that I learn it. So I know where the really steep drop-offs are. So I can anticipate them. But I think that sometimes when it's interfering with your life, you've got to just go, all right, suck it up. I'm going to do it.
Wonderful. That's great, great story. Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Next up is Jeff.
So I just want to come back to something that I hear you all saying in one way or another, that, that the process of really, like, what's the problem here? And the problem is when we're stuck, and that one aspect of being stuck is this sort of, if we're going through our lives with the sense that we need to be pretty certain regarding conclusions we have, that we really have difficulty allowing for the strong likelihood that whatever we think, we're 10 to 20% wrong. And I'm old enough to have experienced that I'm really more like 50% wrong. And if I can't allow that I'm more than like 10 to 20% wrong, the next step of me becoming more aware of whatever it is I'm telling myself that's got me stuck, I'm going to be claiming to myself that my excuse is right. My fear is right. And if I can't allow for the possibility that my excuse might be not entirely true, my fear might not be entirely warranted in that regard, then this third step, or even if I discover what it is that I'm telling myself, this third step of, okay, how do I increase my sense of agency? How do I increase my belief that I'm going to be able to potentially reframe this situation in order to actually do something that's important to me, whether it's drive over that mountain, whether it's making a presentation that I'm scared of, or whatever it is. You know, how do I get to that point where I can say, I can figure this out, or we can figure this out, or whatever happens, you know, we'll deal with it. You know, an orientation of resilience, or, you know, that you know, we don't really know what's going to happen. Kind of like, you know, the old adage, you know, that there's a difference between having a plan going into a boxing match and the first time that you get hit in the jaw. You know, I know I'm going to be, I have confidence I'm going to be able to deal with it, even though I don't know what's going to come up. If I can't adopt those empowering beliefs to help modify the limiting beliefs that have got me stuck, then I really have no place to move. Like I'm just stuck. And so those three propositions, I think, are really essential to being able to personally move forward in the face of things that momentarily, at least, have us scared stuck.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. We'll come to these points very soon. The point about the tentative thing, I want to focus on that. I want to see what everybody thinks about that. And we'll build off that. So Kevin, how do you decide? How do you balance between challenge and comfort?
I lost the balance. So yeah, for that, I would see, if for example, I'm not comfort status quo, what I have, what I, you know, job or relationship, possible I'm going to have a desire, how motivated, I'm going to reach another comfortable zone, which is a challenge. Have the time decide, it's kind of challenge, but it looks good picture. So from that, I think I would say it's kind of related. The challenge is so to motivate you reach another comfortable zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. So next up is Joe.
I actually was just going to throw out another question there, is that I think is really important, though. How does your culture impact your ability to get outside your comfort zone? I mean, I think that there's individualistic cultures and more communal cultures, some that encourage you or force you outside your comfort zone versus ones that would allow you to maybe remain in your comfort zone.
Sure, I'm going to broaden that question and make it, because that's what we have not focused on much. You know, what's the role of other people in yours, kind of facing your comfort zones, dealing with your comfort zone? Because, you know, there is this interaction that you have with other people. Many times you see that you are stuck by the feedback that you get from other people. You can also many times see what you can do by looking at what other people can do. So what's the role of other people? So we'll get to that. Next, I want to take, so I want to now go to the question of awareness first, then the question of tentativeness, and then the question of other people. So first question is, and this is crucial, because how do you become aware of this issue, that you're stuck, that you are kind of coasting? How do you become aware that, okay, you know, you're not taking enough challenges? You know, yes, what you were doing was challenging, but now it is no longer challenging. So what kind of internal feedback mechanism do you know, what do you need as an internal feedback mechanism or self-awareness to monitor this and make decisions about that? So any thoughts about that? So we'll start with Cheng, Evanique, and Joe. Cheng.
Yeah, I think the awareness, I think it's bothered. When, you know, I always get bored if I stay with something a little bit longer. So I think that's my kind of signal of I need something new challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Even the job I mentioned, I was changing my job every 2-3 years because I was working a smaller company, and they start to repeat when you work for 2-3 years. So now I'm working as my own business. Nothing is the same. It's every day there's a new challenge, much more interesting. So to me, boredom is the way to tell.
Thank you. Next up is Evanik, Joe, Jyoti, and Lloyd. Evanik.
I think I like Jang's answer of boredom. I think that's one thing. I think another thing is dissatisfaction and restlessness. You know, when you're looking at your life and you're like, there's really nothing wrong with it, but I'm just not satisfied with what I'm doing right now. That means you've gotten in a comfort zone. And it's ironic that we call it a comfort zone because it's not really comfortable. You just feel stuck and you feel like what am I going to do next? I think when you have that question of what am I going to do next? And then you have that fear of, oh crap, what if I do that thing? I think Jeff makes a really good point about like what's the worst that can happen, right? Like you fall on your face, you fail. And then what? You pick yourself back up again and you keep it moving. You know, that's the way you gotta look at it. But I think when you're dissatisfied with your life and there is no real reason, apparent reason that's apparent to you, that's when you start looking like why am I stuck? Why am I in this situation? Why am I dissatisfied? And then you realize it, and then you have to just take those next steps forward.
Thank you, Evanik. Next up is Joe.
I think this is an area actually where form follows function does actually have a very interesting role. When you're hanging on to the forms and not thinking about the functions of what you're actually doing, you're not getting outside your comfort zone. So an example would be somebody at work that is resistant to change and is spending more time resisting change than they are actually doing to adapt to it. And I think that that's a clear indication that you're hanging on. So your job may be completely different in 3 years, 2 years. But you're doing everything you can to make sure that your job stays the same. You know, that it may need to be different in 3 years, but you're doing everything to make sure you're just doing the same thing. And you're almost in this, you're defending yourself as opposed to seeking new challenges. And I think that that's really kind of, I think that that's a clear sign. I think that dissatisfaction is a role in that as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. I want to follow up on the comment that Evanik made. It was very interesting. Comfort zone is not exactly comfortable many times. And I can think of it in terms of physical analogy. Like when you're sleeping or something, there is some position that's very comfortable to you at a moment. But if you're in that position for too long, it starts to get uncomfortable. And the thing is that you can be slow at realizing it or quick at realizing it. So the same thing, same position is like it goes from being actually a very good position to be in to being not so good position to be in. So there is this, and only by being aware of that you can notice that, you know, like when you achieve something, you know, which was challenge, you actually enjoy having achieved that challenge. But if you stay there for too long, it starts to get boring and it starts to get, so I think that's a very good way of thinking. You know, sometimes this is not comfortable. Next up is going to be Jyoti, Lloyd, Becky, and Mike. Jyoti.
Yeah, when your routine starts getting on your nerves and you are constantly rearranging your routine to get something out of it, that means it's time for you to get out and do something different, challenging.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great point. Lloyd.
Yeah, I can only speak for my situation, and I just responding to something what I've heard. I think I'm someone who listens a little too carefully to my fears. You know, for some reason, fear is a little tricky because it's very guttural. It's very immediate, you know, and it feels, you know, it's so automatic. You know, it feels like right. But I kind of like the idea of basically questioning our fears. How do I know? How am I so sure that something bad is going to happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, just to question that fear, it's so automatic, but just to stop and say, how do I know that this bad outcome is going to occur? What am I telling myself, like Jeff was saying? What conversation am I telling myself? How am I so sure that something bad is going to happen from this? So it's sort of questioning that very automatic, you know, fear response, if you will.
Wonderful. Great point, Lloyd. I mean, that's really fantastic point, because kind of motivation by fear and motivation by love operate very differently. They have a completely different cycle to it. Like, fear by its nature is limiting, whereas love by its nature is kind of enabling. It is kind of opening up to things. Fear by itself is kind of closing down and kind of hunkering down. And so it's, though both of them are emotions, the pattern of actions that follow from it. And there is a correspondence with that of the knowledge too. So I would love to explore that further, but thank you for bringing in that dimension. Next up is going to be Becky.
I think that awareness comes when it's when you feel the cost of staying where you are. And it's what you said, it's like when you're in bed, it's comfortable for a certain amount of time, but everything changes around you, and your refusal to change means that you are falling behind. And there needs to be that reassessment of your environment to realize what the cost is, because maybe the cost isn't initially a lot, but with time things compound, and that cost grows, and it'll manifest through that. Maybe if you never really leave your idea of drifting, it's hard to see it within yourself. But that's where having someone around is really useful, because your lack of self-awareness doesn't mean everyone else doesn't see it. So when someone tells you something as like in your face as you're not living up to your potential, you know, then that's a wake-up call for those who aren't as self-aware.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. And it brings me back to what Joe said about form and function, because you can look at it exactly like, you know, like at one point of time, there is always this dance between form follows function. And at a time, you created a form which was perfect for that function, and it is very good. But function is a living thing. It keeps changing. And the form is a static thing. It does not change. So the same form, like, you know, you're in bed and you're comfortable, that form was perfect for that particular function, but your body is a living thing. It keeps changing. And because of that, you need to keep changing the form. And you need to be aware. You need to have this kind of, you need to be attuned to the functions of saying, what is actually living? And you say, oh, I'm not living up to the function that I can be. And this form is not good enough anymore. It was good, but it was in the past. And the time element is crucial to this, because the same thing that is good in one context is not in the next context. Excellent. Next up is Mike, Laura, and Marco. Mike, how are you aware about your comfort and whether you're in a good place or a bad place? Mike, your audio is not working. Okay, you can hit an exclamation mark once your audio is fixed. Next up is Laura. Laura, what do you think about the awareness?
Well, have to go back to the years when I was working. And my awareness of that sort of thing would be that as soon as I started feeling like that I was too comfortable in that place where I was sort of fitting into the mentality, then I knew I hit a danger zone, that I was being complacent and needed to start thinking about how to change. And I became a change agent instead of a complacent player. And that was always after that. That's how I basically wound up approaching any job in an institution, because there was always a place for change.
Wonderful.
Oftentimes for me, and very important. So that was my style.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Next up is Marco.
Maybe I'm not really answering the question, but I think like a good motivator, especially if you're fearful of sort of like, going out of your comfort zone, is thinking of the possibilities of the good that'll happen, and sort of like imagining the good things happening, so to be less fearful.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Marco. So next we are going to take up the question of holding things in a tentative way, accepting the fact that you don't know everything and the implications of that. After which we're going to look at the point, Becky also referred to that, of the external feedback. What is the role of feedback from other people, interaction with other people in managing your comfort zone properly? Okay, so first about the tentative point. And Jeff, fantastic points today. So let's take the point about being tentative. So the idea, and I certainly fall prey to this, of kind of thinking that you know everything and proceeding. Kind of realizing that you are wrong, keeping in mind the possibility that you can be wrong, not as a theoretical thing, but as a real possibility, and listening very carefully for anything that is anomalous, anything that is telling you otherwise. Your confirmation bias, your desire for comfort, is all about evading feedback that goes against what you think. And so there is a tremendous tendency of doing that and holding open the possibility. I like Sapolsky's terms of strong conclusions, strong convictions held lightly. That idea of the tentativeness, what is the role of that in managing your level of challenge, dealing with the comfort zone, going beyond your comfort zone? Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to talk about this. Don't know if I've done a good job of specifying the problem, but basically holding open the possibility that you're wrong. What is the role of that in doing this? Next up is going to be Jeff, followed by Joe. Jeff.
Thank you, Shrikant. I think you did a great job of saying it. I just think that Sapolsky's point, strong opinions loosely held, I think it's a little bit of a naive orientation towards what we as human beings want to do. We want to arrive at conclusions that we can really hold strongly. And we generally don't take so well evidence that is sitting there in front of us that might question whether or not our conclusions are right. I just think that's at least in my experience with myself and quite often with people in the world, that's just, that's just the orientation. They're not, the harder point of that phrase is loosely held. And that so and I can tell you, I just spent 5 days going through a severe illness, and my conclusion was, I'm not really sick. I'm fine. I'm just going to get better. My bias towards my own health, almost ended up with me losing my life. And so I had very strong personal experience with this in the last 2 weeks. And if I had allowed my opinion about this to be tentative, if I'd allowed my own conclusion about it to be tentative, I would have been open to seeing what my wife was seeing, to seeing what my doctor was seeing. And listen, man, you're really sick. We're going to get you to a hospital and figure this out. Because I had my own conclusion, not tentatively held, that I never get sick. I'm going to be fine. And so this is a really important point. And I think it's at the heart of us being stuck in holding on to our excuses, holding on to our fears that really hold us back from doing things that we really do wish we could do. And I love Allison's story about driving around the mountain. I just think that's beautiful and powerful. And so I just think that that's really at the heart of a lot of this. The question basically, as you were saying it, Shrikant, is there any possibility that in these things that have gotten me so scared that I've talked myself into, is there any possibility that I might be wrong? Because that allows me to maybe change and get through it because I think that comfort, I think it really is a bad word for it, because in a way, comfort is either scared, like scared of being wrong, or just scared of moving through it. And it's not, neither one of them is actually that comfortable. They're more like defensive, versus really the most comfortable place is a malleable place where we could actually ask ourselves, hey, am I possibly wrong here? Hey, could I get some more information that might enable me to do something that's really important? That's actually possibly a more comfortable place where I can have this conversation with myself and acknowledge that I might be wrong and there might be a better answer. And who knows, it might serve me better.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I want to bring up a couple more points. I mean, this is actually very, very deep. And what we'll do is that after looking at other people, I want to look at the term comfort itself, because I'm very uncomfortable with the term comfort, because it seems to kind of, we'll look at it and see what the concept is and what are the different ways of thinking about it. One point I want to make is that our idea of what is going on is a combination of many things that is going, basically when we say, okay, things are okay, or things are good, or things are bad, actually, it's actually many, many, many different things happening at the same time, some of which may be good or bad. And the goodness, the bad parts may be masked by the good parts. So let's say you're good at something, let's say, but you're doing something bad in the midst of it. Sometimes the good part kind of masks the bad part. So you kind of have to tease even those things out, of saying that, okay, I may be right about a bunch of things, but I may be wrong about a bunch of things. And getting rid of those bad things can really help you. So you have to be open, not just to kind of the overall picture, because you may be able to do 10 times better if you kind of stop doing some of the bad things. So it's kind of being able to be honest with yourself and being able to do that, so that the issue of tentativeness applies not to a single conclusion, but like a combination of conclusions. Next up is going to be Joe, Evanik, and Becky. Joe.
So very quickly, I think that this kind of combines two things. This combines the question that I posed where you said, what is the role of other people? And then yourself in this process. So the role of other people is they're providing you with feedback, but how you integrate that feedback is based on how you actually feel, like how strongly you feel about your opinions. So if I'm so certain about my map of the world and my understanding of the world that I'm not willing to change it, then all the people in the world really aren't necessarily going to do me any good. But if you are open, and this is like, it goes back to having a fixed versus growth mindset as well. But if you're open and you start integrating the information that you're getting, the feedback that you're getting, then that allows you to say, okay, then I can push outside. I need to get outside my comfort zone. I need to challenge my beliefs and my maps of the world, my understanding of the world. And I think that that's kind of like, you see this, it is a dance between the two things. But you can't be too sure of yourself and then then the role of culture kind of comes into it. It's just like Jeff's wife telling him, hey, look, you're really sick. Eventually he accepted it, right? So thankfully. So anyway, sorry to use that example again, Jeff.
That's a great point. So let us combine both those things, right? Because I think they actually belong together, kind of the tentativeness and listening to other people, because you are actually getting feedback. A lot of it is, we are social beings. A lot of the feedback it's not just like us saying something about a rock. We're typically saying something about a social thing. And there are other people who are looking at the same thing from a different perspective. And we are naturally working with them. And so this issue of tentativeness and taking feedback from the other people. I mean, I can tell you, my good friends who, will give me feedback. Some of them will give it very gently, and some of them will give it very harshly. And I really appreciate whichever form. Some of them are gentle, but very persistent. They will point out things to you. Sometimes many people are not willing to put themselves on the line. So they will kind of gently suggest, okay? And then after a while, you'll figure out, oh, that's what they were trying to say. But there are other people who will take the cost and say, hey, you're an idiot here. Look, this is just wrong. What are you doing? What do you think you're doing? Okay. And I really appreciate that, because in the long term, that is tremendously valuable. That's actually, other thing I want to say is that we do have the confirmation bias. There is a tendency of just going with what we know and saying, yeah, I know that. And you're trying to shut things off. So having people who care enough about you to give you honest feedback, even when you hate hearing it, I think we have to be very grateful for that. So next up is going to be Evanik, followed by Becky. Evanik.
Yeah, actually, I was going to go in that same direction, Shrikant. So really quick story, like I started at my job, well, now I'm going into my 3rd year. And so the one thing I hate is annual reviews. Like I hate them with a passion. And so when I was at my old job for like the last 5 years, my manager is someone I had known for 12 years. And it was so funny because I was like, our reviews were no reviews at all. We were just like, here, sign this. I'm like, yeah, okay, here you go, send it back. With my new company, new manager, and she believes in giving like constructive feedback. And the first thing she said is that you had a great review. And then I was like, I am so uncomfortable right now because I know what's coming. It's the things that I can improve, right? And so she's saying all these things, and I'm like, oh God, that's so true. Like I'm sitting here and I'm like literally in front of my computer cringing, like literally cringing and like trying not to show it because of course I'm on camera. And so, but what I had to say to myself is, and I think this is the point, is like, is what the person's saying going to make you a better person? Is the person, what the person's saying is the feedback that you're receiving, is that there to help you grow, or is it just to destroy you? And I think that's a good judge of judging what people say, because, you know, like it or not everybody has your best interest at heart when they say something to you, or they may mean well, but it may not be advice that you can take. But I think when you get feedback or you get, you know, honest criticism, it's like, okay, will this help me grow? Or is this gonna like help me live in fear? Like some people give you good advice, but it's based out of fear. And it's because they love you, but it's still based out of fear and it's not helpful. So I think looking at it like that, and the way I had to look at this review, which was really impactful and really helpful to my work, I had to look at it and say, is it right? And is it true? And then is it helpful? And it was all of those things. But I tell you, getting it, it's hard to take it sometimes. But when you do, you just have to judge it that way. So that's, I was going in that same direction you were. It's like, you just need to hear it.
Thank you. Thank you, Evanik. And it can be very hard because kind of changing, fundamentally, it is like letting, Jordan Peterson says it beautifully, it's like letting a piece of you die. And you kind of have to let that happen for you to grow. Next up is Becky, followed by Lloyd. Becky.
So I used to act like my thoughts were me. And I used to, you know, they're one and the same. So when my thoughts were attacked, I was being attacked. But that comes from pride. That comes from the arrogance of like, I know what I know, and that's, and I'm right. And so that was me when I was in college. That was me when I was younger. And it was only until like I knew that that came at a cost, to be so wrong, but not be willing to take feedback, that like it just cost me way too much. And so afterwards, I treat my thoughts like it's a separate entity, and I am extremely critical of what I know, and so but at the same time, what I know, I hold on to it with a strong conviction, so that that I'm very careful to vet out the consistency, but I'm also allowing other people to do the same. Like, let me attack it with as much honesty as possible, but that's not me, because I'll never know the full truth. We're just limited. But I'm still going to hold it with such integrity. What is there has value. What is there is it has been carefully vetted, but it's not all right. So treating like a separate entity really allows me to have that dialogue, to interact with it in an honest way, for me to criticize it without hurting myself, and to invite criticism from others without hurting myself. And that's, I think, ultimately that's like a intellectual humility. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. I'm going to share an image here, how I think about this. So this image, right? To me, this actually, see, it's very odd that, you know, I'm not religious, but I'm finding that ideas in Bhagavad Gita or the Gospel of John or Tao Te Ching actually answer these questions much better than all the modern psychology questions. like what you said right now, Becky, this is basically saying that the core of you is different from your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. Just realizing that you are trying your best. It is a product of your work, your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, but they are all at a distance from the core. At this, so this one is your thoughts, this one are your emotions, and this one is your actions, your habits. And they are all at a distance from the core. And you can try your best to move them towards it, but you can always look at it from the center. When you look at it from the center, you realize that's not me. Those are my thoughts. That's not me. Those are my emotions. That's not me. Those are my actions. And what it does is that it gives you an independent perspective from which to look at it internally. The same thing happens when you're looking at other people and trying to get their feedback. Again, again, using Bhagavad Gita, you're simply saying that they too are children of God. They too have God in them. They too have a center. And their ideas, their thoughts, their emotions, and their actions are different. And they are interacting with you. This could be either they're giving you actual feedback or you're seeing them actually. Just the act, and this is a point from Carl Rogers on authentic relating. When you actually authentically relate to another person, you not only learn what they are, but you learn a lot about you. Because you can see that, oh, you don't have to have this particular constellation of thoughts. You can have it that way. You don't need to feel this way. It's possible to feel that way, both positive and negative. It's not necessary to have these habits. You can have those habits. And you're kind of putting yourself in that position. If when you're authentically relating, you're saying that the common dot is the same, and you're seeing the variation along each of those axes. And what that does is that it gives you the external perspective, either created by yourself or created by your interaction with other people. It's like Archimedes, it's like you have a place to stand from which you can transform yourself and think about yourself in a new way. So thank you so much. Next up is Lloyd. Lloyd, what do you think about this?
Well, this conversation is kind of making me, I wrote down two conclusions. I just want to find them. Let me just see here. God, I lost my place. You said so much there. It's like, geez, my God. Let me just see. I guess, wait a minute, I think I have it here. Oh yeah, here it is. I'm starting to believe that if you hold your beliefs very strongly, you may be already wrong. I mean, if you're holding them very strongly, you may be already wrong on that. And like Evanique was saying, if you don't take constructive criticism from a trusted person, you might be already wrong, just right out of the gate. So.
Thank you. I mean, I just wanted to clarify when Robert Slapowski talks about the, opinions strongly held, what he means is that you act on it. If you think something is true, you act on it. And loosely held means that you take feedback from the action. You, instead of holding it, so it's a way of, tentative. So, there are two formulations. One, you hold everything tentatively. The second is strong opinions held weakly. I prefer strong opinions held weakly because it captures both the necessity of action, of saying that I need to act on whatever I can understand, and remaining open to fixing it. So in that sense, you are being tentative that you will fix things, but at the same time, you're being you are saying that, I have to act. You don't have a choice of, saying, okay, I don't know. You have to decide what the world is like, what your life is like, what it requires, and you have to act, but you remain open to corrections. Becky.
Yeah, it's a way of guaranteeing that you have skin in the game.
Yes.
That your thoughts are not just some intellectual fun pursuit. You truly believe it, and you're willing to count the costs for it. So it's not the same as people who can compartmentalize and have like, well, I can think one thing and completely behave another. There's that integrity to what you really believe, and because there's an impact on what you believe manifesting in how you act. You're going to make sure that you're after what is real. You're not going to let your bias or your pride get to you.
Wonderful. Next, let's, if anybody wants to talk about the role of other people in managing your comfort zone, giving you feedback that you're stagnating, giving you feedback, whatever, in terms of role of other people in handling this issue of getting out of your comfort zone. Go ahead and type exclamation mark. Next up is Jeng, followed by Joe. Jeng.
Yeah, I think others actually can be very positive or negative for us to live outside our comfort zone. I mentioned I joined the landmark training, and I found the value of that training is actually not the teacher, a little bit, but a lot of them is the students. That's why I decided when you go to a good college, it's not the professors, the students there who are very motivated. Everybody wants self-development. And I mentioned I went to skydiving with them. It was always on my bucket list, but never get the time or get energy around to it. And then there's people mentioned, oh, let's go skydiving. And then cool, so I joined, and someone had dived like 100 times or something. So he brought us there and we did it. And it's such a great experience. Like leaving out, I was so scared when I was in the sky and the door is open. I said, what I get myself into? And the free falling. Like, it's so funny. I didn't feel scared until I was in the sky and door is open. It's like, oh my God. Anyway, and I get through it. It's so funny. Like, then when you live with a group of people who live on the edge, you really have that motivation. You want to try different things. And it's all I'll go scuba diving. I said, oh my God, I want to do that too. So everything they do is what I want to do, but I don't have time to get to it. So like we go ski, I have a group of friends, we go ski, and some people like to challenge. Like, let's go double diamond. I like black, but double diamond is a little bit challenge. But everybody go there and say, I will go too, So it's sometimes you go with people, same as the people you live around, like Tony Robbins, they treat all this, training all these people, they all keep constantly challenge themselves. When you be around those people, you get that energy. Then you find that success when you conquer your fear, and it's very exciting process.
Wonderful, excellent point. I just wanted to make a point that it's not always, people are not always positive, because there is the phenomena, like if you're, for example, full of fear, generally you will gather people around you who are also full of fear, and it actually forms like a circle around you that you actually support each other's fear and remain in that zone. Okay, that's a very real phenomena. Okay, so it's not that people themselves will give you the feedback. It's a certain kind of people. So there is, it's basically you get what, so it's kind of fear inside and outside, or kind of love inside and outside. So it's a challenge inside and outside. Next up is going to be Joe, Mike, and Maritza. Joe.
I think that there are multiple components to this. And one is, could be the systemic aspect of things, just the way it is. But then there's the personal aspect. So like the personal aspect, let's just say where, and you just said it beautifully, actually. Some people look at effort, minimal effort, not necessarily getting outside of their comfort zone, and they'll surround themselves with those individuals in order to stay in their comfort zone. So they look at effort as a way of, as an exercise in futility versus actually a way of actually of self-mastery. And those individuals, and this is kind of what the Philadelphia, or yeah, I guess that too, the 52 living ideas actually encourages, is that is essentially that you're putting yourself around people that look at effort as a form of self-mastery. But there's also this other aspect of it. There are people that have this kind of way, they feel threatened by individuals that are you know, that are successful. But then they look at other people, then there's some people that look at other people and are inspired by those individuals and say, wow, I can never, you know, I'm impressed with that. Maybe let me, you know, incorporate some of what they've done or gone through, and remember that when I'm going through my own personal trials, and kind of mimic in a good way the behavior of someone that is actually persevering. So there's that aspect of culture as well that I think is really kind of important. I also think it can be facilitated within an organizational or even a country sense. In an organizational sense, that if it's a level organization where everybody can actually start to pursue different ideas, or actually even encouraged to pursue those ideas, I think that that is a culture that allows you to grow. Whereas one that is much more mechanistic and focused on maintaining its current, the current norms and current, its current role in the market, I'll just say, that can be very restrictive as to how how you can function and what you can do to grow. So there's a systemic aspect to it too. I mean, and that happens with countries, right? I mean, there's a lot of countries that, the US is known for its innovation, and there are various factors that go into that. And there's a lot of people that have copied the models that the US has used in order to innovate. But there are also cultures that just copy, right? So they're not getting outside their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. they're not, and there's a cultural aspect of it too, that does exist. And again, Peterson puts this beautifully. He says, there's certain advantages that the American system allows that, say, a communist system doesn't. And he says it allows forms to die faster than a communist system keeps the forms in place. So that's the role of culture in ability to be able to grow.
Excellent. So to give you an example of the culture, is consider it like a traditional hunter-gatherer tribe. Basically, everybody is in the same context. They have the same language. Everybody is used to everybody. Their consciousnesses are actually, their emotions, their thoughts are just going round and round. And you're trying to actually keep just that. And it's very much kind of inward looking. A person can't really escape that much. They are all kind of tied together. Contrast that with New York City. Like, people coming from all kinds of cultures, all kinds of ages, all kinds of professions, all used to dealing with each other all the time. So what it does is that it is a way of seeing kind of the richness of the thoughts, emotions, actions that are there in people all the time, and being used to that and cherishing that, and kind of, benefiting from that, using it, if you're and of course, you can always be anywhere, and you can turn inward, or you can become cliquish. But so there is the kind of environment which makes this, what shall I say, this kind of cosmopolitan idea of saying that, look, this is the Stoic idea of cosmopolitan, that, you're a creature of the world. You're open to everything that everybody does, and you want to integrate with that. You want to interact with that in a positive way and see what can be done by doing that. And so that's a way, it's a very courageous position. You're saying that no matter where I'm coming from, I'm open to this other person who's there, regardless of their age, what their profession is, where, what their culture is. And I am saying, okay, what can we do? And what that does is that it provides such a massive feedback. You're kind of putting yourself in this cauldron of feedback from which that you can learn. And in a sense, we do that in 52 Living Ideas, because the feedback is far more massive in terms of, it's far more broadband than just seeing people on the street or interacting, having small interactions. This is a massive amount of interaction from people who are very different. At the same time, there is a kind of a commonality of saying, let's learn and grow together. And that is the kind of foundation for it. And because we've been doing this for some time, there is a great deal of trust and benevolence that is there with all of us, that allows for a lot more feedback and a lot more kind of actually noticing of things. People don't have to actually tell you. You can just notice that, oh, you know what? This person is approaching this problem of comfort zone differently. What is going on there? If you can just think of that, that allows you to learn from it. Next up is going to be Mike, Maritza, and Lloyd, and Laura. Mike.
Okay, along those same lines that you and several others have made, evolution in general has always favored anxiety and chaos and instability. And that's true with pre-life forms like chemical reactions. It's true with neural nets. It's true with single cell life forms, and it's even true with us. Over the last billion years, those people that weren't anxious and uncomfortable became lunch or became extinct. The overcomfortable, what's happened is progress has always been at the edges of society and civilization. Toynbee and Gibbons and Spangler and Jared Diamond's societies that have become too comfortable. A critical mass of people became too comfortable. Those societies became extinct and collapsed. A simple inculcation of that is necessity is the mother of invention. And people have almost everybody has said something like that, that if a critical mass of people get too comfortable, we're not going to go anyplace. If not for our world wars, we wouldn't have jet travel and nuclear energy and the semiconductors and even Zoom. So having anxiety is where we evolved to be comfortable with a certain amount of discomfort. And as long as anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger, as we learned from our Nietzsche impersonator a few months ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant points, Mike. Fantastic. Just love them. I want to add one thing here. I think I don't know who this person is. I think it'll come to me. Maybe Mike will know. There is this theory of verges, that verge basically verge is something which is at the edge of two different things. That's where growth takes place. It's the same idea that Jordan Peterson talks about, at the edge of order and chaos. And that's where all the growth is. And you have to be willing to have that. So in some ways, America is full of verges, and you can actually construct your life so that you have enough verges where you are going to have these very dissimilar things. Even a conversation like this is full of verges. Each person is making their own points, and they're coming at it from different things. And if you're actually seeing, what's the commonality and what's the difference, all the time, you get a much more richer perspective. So this is the same thing, same idea of frontier, role of frontier in America, in building the American character, the role of taking risks, role of facing the unknown, all of that. And it's there in the American character right from the beginning, because of our history and of, that we left. And it's a very odd history because it's people who came from Europe that had a very developed ideas, but the traditions over there kind of sat on their chest and didn't let them move. But the same traditions in a much more freer environment, multiple such traditions interacting with each other and growing and finding places and interacting by choice, and discovering new ones, produces a very different civilization than the old world. Next up is going to be Maritza, Lloyd, and Becky. Maritza.
Yeah, I think the fascinating thing about culture and community is that it is a natural push-in mechanism, getting you out of your comfort zone without too much psychic energy expense on your part. So like, for example, just the nature of interacting with others is going to cause some type of a shift. Something within you is going to change, or it's going to move, and you're going to find yourself moving. And remember, if you're moving, you're not stagnant. So you're not actually staying in this comfort zone. And I think that that's kind of the beauty of a community, is that we, regardless of what the intent may have been for interacting with this community, the end result tends to have more repercussions or more things than we could have possibly foreseen. And that's it kind of works two ways, because it also will force us to look at things from other perspectives. And sometimes it's a matter of just hearing how what you think is a comfortable, happy place looks like to somebody else, or hearing that someone thinks where you are is, a miserable, unhappy place, and you have to pick up the banner for saying, no, this is a good location, a good place, and really forgiving yourself for the possibility that the two perspectives will differ, and just moving forward and seeking to hear, other maybe like-minded souls. So I think that if we engage with others and we honor the bonds of community or culture, we will by necessity be constantly pulled out of whatever comfort zone we find ourselves in.
No, excellent point. I wanted to make 2 points about that. One is, we evolved in the context of extended families. And look at the child's experience in an extended family as opposed to what we have today. The extended family, you are interacting with lots of kids, a little bit older than you, a lot older than you, a little bit younger than you, a lot younger than you. You're talking to your grandparents and your uncles and your granduncles and, and all of them, this rich symphony of people around you are giving you what they can. And together, what they can give you is so much more than just a nuclear family. And that's a fundamental thing. Similarly, similarly in groups like this, where there is common value. Okay, there is a common value. We are very different from each other, all of us. We have our own lives. We have our own professions. We have our own things that we like. But there is some commonality, and that commonality produces enough kind of common values, common knowledge, and enough concern about other people that we can speak our mind of saying, this is what I understand. What do you think? And listen to the other person and say, this is what they are saying. What do I think about that? Give it a hearing. Give it a hearing at a very deep level. So these kind of communities, whether an extended family or a community like this, I find it to be essential for me, this is essential. I'm able to grow much, much faster with 52 living ideas because it's so rich. It's not just, and it's two ways. You're speaking out your mind and you're getting this feedback. Other people are speaking their mind, which is completely new. You're not even thought of that, okay, you could focus on this particular topic. And they're saying something about this that you've never thought of. And then you start making connections of that with other things. So I think this is critical. Maritza, go ahead.
Just one quick thing. I think that it also works from the negative perspective, or maybe I would say the opposite perspective. There's also the case where in hearing a community set of values, if one hears dissonance, it allows one to further solidify, this is not me or not for me.
Yes. No, that's a great point. Because it gives basically a foil. Because, we don't know, it's like our conception, our awareness of ourselves is limited. So just having a foil allows you to say, no, not that. I'm not that. And that is a huge thing too. Or you can say, oh, that's exactly like me. Thank you, Lloyd.
Yeah, I would just say, picking up on what you were saying, Shrikant, I would love to see, this is just my personal critique perhaps, but I'd love to see American leaders better demonstrate a global or cosmopolitan mentality by overtly mentioning other countries' response to problems and perhaps adopting them. I don't know why I don't hear, hey, in Norway or Sweden, they do this. That would be great to try. Or, citing other countries as models. I don't know why there's a fear. Maybe I'm wrong, but is there some fear of acknowledging a solution from another country?
I would just say in defense of America, this is least in America. Like you have not seen other countries, maybe. The great thing is that, see, Americans are very critical of themselves, and that's good. But like, for example, the extent to which many countries are inward looking, you look at Japan, you look at India, you look at many countries, like for them, it's like other people are from the moon. Okay, comparatively, because America is open to people, there are people from other countries like Norway and Japan here. So so but I understand where you're coming from, but all I'm saying is that this is very natural for most countries. And primarily, I don't think of this at a political level about leaders, because it is mostly about people. You know, leaders are simply, you know, you get leaders that you deserve, you know, that a place deserves. And so it's a question of, you know, culture. And certainly, I think that I'm very much in favor of comprehensivism. So I would say not only cultures, other countries, but I would say different times. You know, talk about Aristotle, talk about, you know, Aquinas, talk about, you know, Spinoza and all in the same breath as you talk about people. Also talk about different professions, all about, and all of that. I mean, that's how I think
You have
about
to
it.
deep dive someplace. You have to deep dive. It's not in the news.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know I had my on. That was my.
Okay, that's fine.
That was me talking to myself, and I didn't know I had the mute.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Next up is going to be Becky. Becky, go ahead.
Yeah, there was something that you said earlier about Verge and being at the border of order and chaos, really being the growth. And one of the questions that I had asked was about like personality. And so I want to tie it up with like Jungian typology a little bit. So the anima animus, or the inferior function, that's like the source of your like your insecurity, where your fear is. It has like that pessimistic attitude, very unsure. And when you lean into it, and this is something that I kind of talked to Mike about with like Goggins, like when you lean into your inferior function, that the thing that really defines what makes something uncomfortable, because we all have different inferior functions. And so knowing yourself helps you, because the fear is an indicator to you of what that is. It's like, oh, this is really where I'm treading that order and chaos. Like that's my comfort zone, is avoiding that fear. I'm going to run to my hero function. I'm going to run to my auxiliary function, but my inferior function, I'm staying away from that. But when you lean into it, that's growth. That's when it really helps you get access to like that other part, the shadow.
Wonderful. So I just, for those who are not familiar with this, it's like, suppose you're primarily emotional, you know, you operate emotionally, thinking through things. Suppose you're kind of more focused on your own emotions, thinking about the external context and planning, which is very much of a kind of a thinking about the external world function, will be harder. But if you can incorporate a little bit of that, that is going to go a long way. Suppose you're kind of more intuitive, you're trying to kind of get a sense of it, or you're more, suppose that is the case, that you're more intuitive, then kind of lean the things that are kind of very concrete physical movements, that's going to be a little bit grating for you. So being kind of open to that. And it's, again, here kind of interacting with different kinds of people is a big help of finding good people who are very different from you. And that's a very, very easy way of growing, that finding people who are good, who have got great characters and common values and are different from you. That's like, it's kind of commonality, having a strong commonality and strong differences. That's like the ideal situation for like tremendous amount of growth. Next up, Becky, you wanted to add anything to this? Okay. Next up is going to be Joe, followed by Jen. Joe.
Really quickly, and I'm going to be very brief about this, because you know what Lloyd brought up is that why won't a country maybe integrate something, and it's almost, but there, it's no different than a personality per se. A country has a personality, has a culture, and there is, you're going to integrate something that you think that aligns with what the way your view of the world. Now, yes, there may be a solution to a problem that would actually work very well, but if it doesn't necessarily fit with the personality, they're going to reject that. And that's the same thing that's going to actually happen in the sense that the way an individual works, their personality is going to dictate to some degree as to what they're willing to accept and willing to, you know, and get outside their comfort zone and change their personality and evolve. And I think every country has its own personality and its own acceptance of certain principles. And so I think that they're very analogous, like one's a macro level and one's a micro level. And so I think it's very similar in nature to see, like, you may propose a program in America that everybody thinks is a great idea, and it may very well be, but it's going to be rejected because just the personalities of the country itself. And we do the same thing. And this is the ability to actually integrate is the most important thing. And you know, the country that integrates probably the most or the best is probably the one that's going to be the, you know, the most forward and progressive and forward thinking.
No, absolutely. That's a great point. And I want to point out, as Lisa is doing, America, I mean, consider America and consider, let's take America. The fact that it's a country of immigrants has a profound impact on America, that it is continuously, there is this stream of people with very different views coming in and integrating with it. So there is this play going on between different, which is not so in Japan, for example, or India. They are kind of, there aren't that much flow of people, of very different kinds of people coming in and interacting and growing as a result of that. But next up is going to be Jen, followed by Marissa. Jen.
Yeah, I want to talk about, you mentioned about the nuclear family. And I actually think that's very critical. I think at the time of Industrial Revolution, you know, in order to be efficient, we want the family to be smaller so people can move around more efficiently when they need it. But that's actually, then they emphasize individualism. They said they don't really need their parents. So they actually have big consequence. Then people feel lonely and they're like, they don't have community. And it takes time to actually to know a person or build a strong relationship. It's funny, like when we moved back from China, I went back China 7 years ago for 3 years. When we moved back, actually my husband had opportunity to go to Europe to live. I was very excited, said, why don't we go to Europe, you know, so we can live a different continent. My husband said they learned, like studies said, kids actually make friends at their teen years. That's the critical time. So if you move too much places, they may lose that time to make friends. So they need a more stable environment. That's why we move back to America. And the funny thing is, when I move back to the same neighborhood, everybody repeat exactly the same thing, like nothing ever happened. And they saw me, they don't even know I left. And I lived in 3 years in China. I was like, so many changes. I worked for 3-4 different companies, Australian, German, you know, American companies and Chinese companies. And I was traveling around the country. I was like, see all these changes. I was like, it's amazing. It's funny, like when we come to American because we wanted the American dream. But once you stay here, it's always start to repeat, get boring. Then we had this Chinese dream. I was like, people move back to China, have all these adventures. Then we move back to China. Then we come back. It's funny, like how this the hill is always greener on the other side. It seems like we, but I think Europe have so many nice culture and art. But I have a friend who actually moved from Switzerland to here. He's a Malaysia Chinese. And she said that they already can retire in Europe. The reason they moved here, because they want their kids to feel at home. They said no matter how long they live there, their kids always feel they're foreigner. I think that's the great thing about American, to have that integration, like it's just somebody come earlier. I always tell my Caucasian friend, like, the real owner is Indian. You just gotta come earlier as come late. There's no difference.
No, absolutely. That, I think that's great point. Thank you. Next up is Maritza.
Just a couple random, really random things. She can't promise they tie. So a Bible verse came to mind when Joe was speaking, and it's the idea of, it's when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees. I think it's Luke, but don't quote me on that. And he says, "Thou gavest me no kiss. Why?" And basically, what it is, it's he's talking about, it's a parable where he's talking about how, and it says, because I was so busy serving him, I forgot to worship him. And it really was confounded. And that one sticks out because, as so many lines in the Bible, I just struggle with some of them. And I ultimately made my peace with that statement, in that I viewed it as the idea that when we are in a community, if we lose sight of who and what are actually the community, the culture, well, then we're like, it's this detachment stops us from actually being able to benefit from the actual community, because it's a matter of, if you're so busy talking about, oh, I have to serve God, the whole point is you're supposed to worship God. And that made me think all the way back to one of the very first things Mike said at the beginning of this meetup. He was talking about how we would balance the idea of service to others with this concept of getting out of our comfort zone. And I really had a very hard time with that. Like, it made me cringe, literally. The idea of, am I supposed to want to get out of my comfort zone so that I can service others? Or is it the service of others that will pull me out of my comfort zone? And again, I think the way that I make my peace with that, because, I don't think that our entire life should be about living for anyone. I'm reconciling it with the idea that the very nature of interacting with others in any form is going to pull us out. And perhaps also it's a matter of remembering that a comfort zone should be treated as an iterative process. You're going to, enter and retreat. And perhaps that's a more healthy version of a comfort zone that we can live with. And that would allow us the mythological having of this sweet and eating of it at the same time, right? So we can, if we can, just say we refuse for it to be either I'm in or I'm out, I'm going to put one foot on this side and one foot on the other. Maybe we can make that happen. And then that would be, but if we only have ourselves as a sounding board, we might find it's a near impossibility. The benefit of having other voices surrounding us is that it is a sharp and undeniable reminder that there exists more than one perspective, and that there does not exist just the one truth. And if we find those two statements to be axiomatic, as it were, then we're left with no choice it's almost like you don't actually leave the comfort zone leaves you, and you have to start moving, or you find yourself with nothing underneath your feet. I don't know, maybe it's late and I'm making no sense, but my last 2 cents. Thank you, Shika.
Let me just connect it up with what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going to do a little bit of spoiler by giving you the core idea that I'm going to talk about across Gita as well as the Gospel of John. I think the biggest concept that I've found is the idea of us being children of God. Because it actually it connects with Jacob Bronowski's idea of the long childhood. When he studied all of the science and all of human progress, the ascent of man, he just basically concluded it with saying that man has longest childhood. So to be human is to remain a child. What does that mean? That means you keep growing. That means you never say that this is it. You know, a child of 2 can't say, okay, I've grown enough now. This is nice. Stop. No, you keep growing. Okay. And the child actually captures many things at once. I like the child of God in the sense that it's saying that there is that within you that you can grow up. You know, there is this infinite growth potential within you. You're a child in the sense that you're acknowledging your limits. You're saying, I don't know everything. I'm not everywhere. I'm not, like Gita was saying, I'm not the Himalaya mountains. That's not me. I'm what I am. But in my context, I can be divine. I can be following the highest principles. I can be true. I can be good. I can be beautiful in my context. And you're saying we are all children of God. So you're saying that other person that you see is also like that. They can have this, they have this potential within them. They're also children. We can play with them. They're good at certain things. I'm good at certain things. They're bad at certain things. I'm bad at certain things. We have different domains. They have different toys. I have different toys. And we can gain a lot from each other. So in being children, that means being curious, that means being growing. We actually delight other children by being that. And other children, by being children, help us and delight us and help us grow. So it's like the idea of the family, of saying, you know, somebody may be a little bit older than you, he's your elder brother, you know, or this is a little kid. And so I think it integrates a lot of things together, but that's just one small teaser. I'm going to look through all of, you know, kind of how it works with emotions, how it works with thought, how it works with actions. And the real toughest thing for me is to see the differences between the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. I'm first going to just look at the sheer power and beauty of John 1 and how it expresses the same things very differently. It focuses on different things. And that's going to be, I'm holding that off for tomorrow. So you have to come tomorrow so that you can listen to it. But it's going to be, you know, the most challenging thing I've done. Joe.
I'm going to leave it there. I was going to add something, but that was beautifully said.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
But a growth mindset is living in New Jersey. Is it moving from New York to New Jersey? That's a growth mindset.
Well, I don't know.
Because you lose all left turns. That can't be true.
All right, folks. Evanik, you had something to say.
No, I was gonna say, are you thinking of moving to Recon? Is that why Joe's saying that? I'm nosy.
No, Joe has been trying to push New Jersey on people for a long time.
Well, it's the superiority complex of New York.
Okay, I have to tell you the O. Henry story of there are two men sitting in the bar, saying to each other, like one person has just come back from the West. He says, it's a large country out there. I kept going, went past Iowa. There was still more. And in the far distance, I saw some water. And this guy who is sitting on the east side says, yes, that's true. I crossed the 5th Avenue. Then the 6th Avenue blocks kept getting longer. At a distance, I saw some water, and beyond that, very hazy land, but I was not sure it was there. That's what New Jersey is. Anyway, so that's O. Henry from 19th century. All right.
Sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to laugh that hard.
No, Becky's converting. So
yes. But anyway, there are friends of mine like Joya who have moved to New Jersey so they can look at New York. They get the best sight of New York from New Jersey. So that's what they are. Oh, Becky, you're still here. Okay, wonderful. I have until the end of the month. Okay. Wonderful. Hoboken is just less than a subway ride away. It's like moving to Queens.
I was about to say, isn't that kind of like New
Hoboken
York,
has been
though?
annexed. It's been annexed by New York. So it doesn't.
It's the Crimea of New York.
Yes. All right, folks, this is so delightful. And wait a minute, now it's going to be, is Mike still there? Mike, what do you think of all this conversation you generated?
Are you talking to the non-magical mic?
Yes, the non-magical mic.
Yeah, I just love to sit back. Thank you all so much. This is like, you validated so much of what I thought coming in, and then you changed me in other ways. And just, I have a whole 2 new pages of notes. It was an incredible time. I'll tell you,
go ahead.
Like, just one real important thing is I learned that that it's malleable, that a comfort zone. I like what Maritza said about it being stretched and not broken, and that we need regulators, either self-awareness to regulate ourselves, to know when we need to break out, and other times to know when it's dangerous not to. And then also the community idea of having people watching your back as you're breaking that zone. Yeah, I had a great time tonight. Thanks.
Mike, I just love your meetups. Okay, I think this format is just fantastic because you put so much amount of good work and you put so many things on the table that triggers such great discussion in the breakout rooms, then the questions and the discussion. So it's just amazing. With just that much presentation, you generated the meetup that went on till 12:15. Went past. Yeah. It's supposed to turn into pumpkin. At midnight. What happened? No pumpkin. I was always scared of getting to 12 o'clock. I thought we became pumpkins. Okay. All right. With that, see you folks.
Thank you, Mike.
Everybody.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
Mike. Bye.